Well, good afternoon, viewers, for our most recent national COVID-19 update on restrictions, relaxations, etc. Obviously, over the weekend, there's been quite a bit of movement, particularly down in Victoria. So I'm going to hand over to David in a minute, David Batty, who will give us the most up-to-date on Victoria. But also, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A. You're also quite free, obviously, to put any comments in the chat. But if you do, please make sure that they are civil and respectful to everyone else who may be attending or participating in this webinar, because we are obviously very conscious that the whole idea of vaccine passports, etc., has caused a little bit of angst and concern amongst the sector and the wider community as well. So we can answer some of those questions as we get through this. But David, perhaps we'll go straight to you to give us what the current situation is in Victoria.
Yeah, so as everyone's probably heard, with the changes and the roadmap coming out of Victoria, there's going to be a fairly strong focus on the vaccine and vaccine passports and how that will interplay. We haven't actually got the final rules on how you'll actually show this, but it's going to, a lot of the business opening and a lot of the work around it will be based around those vaccines. So let's kick it off at the earliest stages, and we'll go through the differences between metro and regional as well, because we know that that's going to change. So let's start in metro. So as of at the moment, we're allowed to have 2 people outdoor personal training. That's not a problem. That's 2 people plus the personal trainer. Now, as of the 80% of first doses, which is probably around, they're saying it, I think it's around the 28th of September, they're going to allow up to 5 people to be in that group, so 5 people plus a personal trainer to do personal training. But in saying that, they all need to be vaccinated. And therein lies some of the interesting conversations that we're going to have around how that's going to be shown or proven. We're not sure yet, so there's not a lot of information around that. That'll all be outdoors. So everything in Victoria is going to remain outdoors until we hit 80% of fully vaccinated for 16 plus years old. We are at the moment discussing other parts around that, but when we move into 70% gives you up to 50 people in a group outdoors, still at that 4 square meters. So a big easing in the numbers, but no ability to actually go indoors. Once we hit 80%, we can then have a cap of 150 people inside 4 square meters per person, and a lot of other pieces that are really opening up what they're seeing as the first step into an open economy. When we're talking about regional at the moment is sitting at 10 people are allowed indoors, 20 people allowed outdoors. That won't change at the 80% mark. It only 80% first dose mark. It'll change at the 70% second 2-dose mark, which will put you at 30 people indoors, 100 people outdoors. And at the 80%, you would go to the exact same as what we have in the rest of metro, which will be 150 people indoors. Outdoors is 500 people, I believe.
So David, it seems to me, reading the Victorian roadmap yesterday online, it seems to be a more conservative and slower version of what the government here has introduced in New South Wales. The numbers don't quite align in terms of 70s and 80s and what their restrictions or relaxations may be, but it does seem to be a more conservative model, which I guess is in keeping with the Victorian government's position over the last 18 months or so. Mm-hmm. It's really important, I think, for anyone listening to this or watching this to also acknowledge that the gyms will reopen at the same time as hospitality. There had been a bit of a hiccup in that a couple of weeks back, and we approached the government over that to try and get understanding as to why that was, because we were in line with hospitality before this current lockdown. So the whole community is the whole economy is basically opening up on the same at the same time. So it's not that our sector is being discriminated against in this particular situation.
That's completely accurate. So everything is opening up at the same rates for Vic.
Yeah. New South Wales, have you got anything to add on that at all?
So New South Wales, the only easing of restriction over the weekend was around the lockdown areas being taken out of that and being put back into the Greater Sydney lockdown. So that allows people with vaccinated groups of up to 5 people total. That's 1 trainer plus 4 people. So the group cannot exceed 5 people.
No, okay. And also, just for the benefit of people viewing this, we have, since the government here in New South Wales announced the so-called vaccine passport, have been seeking clarification on a number of issues. First of all, how is that going to be checked? Now, they are talking about possibly linking it with a QR code. They're talking about asking a 24/7 gym to disable access from those that don't have vaccination. What is not sure at this stage, what we're trying to seek clarity on is, okay, who is responsible? Is it the gym owner, the personal trainer? Is it the person that says they are vaccinated or not vaccinated? What happens if someone gives a swipe card to someone who is not vaccinated? Where does the liability lie? Is this going to be mandated, and if by the government? If so, who is going to take responsibility for any indemnity or any sort of, I guess, discrimination cases, etc., that may take place? There's a whole range and raft of, I guess, questions that are still hanging at the moment. The government has told us that they will give us clarity on this. When I say us, they mean the whole economy, including hospitality in our sector as well. They'll give us clarity on this before we get to that 70%. And just on that 70%, reading in the COVID-19 updates in New South Wales this morning, they've moved the dates forward because of the vaccination rates here in New South Wales. They now believe we'll get to 70% double dose in the first week in October and 80% double dose in the middle of October. So what is going to happen at 80% is also a little bit unclear at the moment. We've heard various things, including that the sector will be open up to anybody vaccinated or not vaccinated. That has not been clarified yet. The Deputy Premier did make that statement 2 weeks ago, but that was quickly reined in. So whether that's going to be the case or not, we're not sure. As soon as we know, we'll let you know, but it's quite possible that this so-called vaccine passport, at least in New South Wales, will have a 2-week life on it. And I think we need to also bear that in mind when we sort of get a little bit upset about discrimination and so on there. David, any other comments do you want to make on Victoria, New South Wales at all?
Well, there's a whole heap of questions that will come up, but I'll save them till afterwards. We'll go through each of the different questions and really get into depth. Before
we get back to you, I'll give you a chance to catch your breath. Anthony, anything happening in Queensland that you want to share with us?
I'm sure there's lots happening there, Barry, but as far as the COVID update is, nothing's changed in the last week and a half for us. We've still got our same stage as we did from the 10th of September, which is pretty much as long as you can socially distance, you don't have to wear a mask. And again, we're encouraging when people walk out the door, have it in your pocket. If you're in a gym where it's absolutely packed and you can't social distance, then there is a request to pop a mask on. But obviously with outdoor exercise and in a lot of gyms where it is a little quieter, then social distance is quite possible. Otherwise, no, we've definitely the vaccination rates over the weekend. We had walk-ins actually start on a Saturday, and I think we did nearly 60,000 vaccines over the weekend. So still a little bit behind, obviously, New South Wales and Victoria that are flying along with their vaccination rates. But touch wood, we've been in a pretty good state so far.
Yeah, I think that was a record day for Queensland on the weekend, Anthony, reading the paper.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks, Anthony. David Lewis, any changes or amendments, etc., or news from WA?
Hey, Barry. Luckily, from our point of view, there's no change. So we've not had any changes really for several weeks now. Obviously, there's a push on vaccines in the state, and kids over the age of 12 are now booking in for those as well. So that's been quite busy. Also, quite hard border controls in place, especially in New South Wales and Victoria. There's no changes at all right now, Barry. We're just gearing up for the grand final on the weekend.
And getting over the Brownlow, which went to South Australia, Steve. There's a segue to you, mate.
Yeah, very nice, Barry. Smooth. So look, not a lot changed here in South Australia or the Northern Territory at this stage. Still the same restrictions here in SA with regard to masks and also the 4 square metres in fitness facilities. No comment at this stage on vaccine passports. We have approached SA Police and also NT Police and NT Health for comment there, but everyone's remaining sort of tight-lipped at the moment until there's an announcement federally, and everyone's waiting as well for the eastern states to make a bit of a call there. So no real changes to report here, Barry. At this point, everything's business as usual, which is good. Touch wood, stays that way.
Thank you, Steve. Now, David, we're going to go start these Q&As.
Let's go.
Can we run 5-person boot camps in Sydney, outdoors or indoors?
They must be outdoors. So it's outdoors, 5 people, all must be vaccinated, and that 5 people includes the trainer.
Yep, that's at the moment though, isn't it?
That is correct. Yeah, so that's under the current restrictions until we hit that 70% threshold.
Yep. From Nancy, I'm assuming she's asking mask wearing in classes. I'm assuming that's a question, or I'm not sure if it's a statement.
So currently, New South Wales, you are required to wear masks in indoor classes. That is still something that we're having conversations about, but doesn't seem like something that will change at the moment.
Okay, from Garth in New South Wales, service NSW QR codes required for 4+1 vaccinated outdoor group classes, question mark.
So whenever it comes to anything that is an industry based, so anytime that you're providing a service, a QR code is required everywhere in New South Wales at this stage. So yes, you are going to require a QR code for your Vax+1. The masks for indoor classes at 70%, we're unsure. That's something that they haven't written in yet. As it's going to be an area where they're a little bit less concerned due to the fact that there's going to be all vaccinated people when you reach those indoor limits to start off with at 70%. I believe that there may not be a requirement, but that is nothing in stone yet.
Yep. From Helen in Vic, if you have a home gym, can you train in your backyard? It's just dropped down now, as long as people don't go through the house.
That's a no. You can't actually have anybody to your house, whether that's your front yard, backyard, indoors, outdoors. Your property cannot have any visitors at this stage. So you need to have it in a public area.
Question from Trevor regarding masks and the definition of strenuous exercise. I'm pretty confident that's depending on the individual who's exercising. David?
Basic rule of thumb is you wear a mask until you can't wear a mask. As soon as you get to a point where it gets to inhibit your breathing and it's going to cause you any kind of concern, you're allowed to remove your mask in New South Wales. Yep. Except for in those indoor classes at the moment. Indoor classes, they're still asking you to keep that mask on and you're asked to just leave the room if that is a problem for you.
One from Jenny in New South Wales. Can the trainer travel outside their LGA to do outdoor training with a group of 4?
Not at this stage. So all recreation must remain within their area as far as I've been made aware. There is a couple of cases where people have travelled outside of their LGA and claimed it as essential work. But because we are not on the essential workers list and we are allowed to work within our area, you must stay within your LGA at this stage.
Okay, a couple of questions from an anonymous attendee. We have heard that gyms will open at 80% for everybody, but we've only heard that. It's not been confirmed. As to whether that's going to apply to hospitality or not, I haven't heard anything about that. Have you heard anything about that, David?
No, everything's looking like it's going to line up. At 70%, there's going to be all industries opening up vaccinated. At 80%, everything seems to be in New South Wales in line with each other. They don't seem to be changing the settings other than for the super high risk areas of things like nightclubs and things like that. There may be some requirements around that. But when it comes to client facing, they seem to have figured out that everybody who's client facing has a similar risk.
Yeah, same person has asked, will gym staff have to be vaccinated? They certainly will be during the 70% or the vaccine passport regime. After that, I'm assuming they probably won't have to be, but I'm not sure about that. David, you got a view on that?
Yeah, we're unsure where it will go from that 80% onwards in New South Wales. In Victoria, it looks like at the 80% mark, it'll still be a requirement to have the vaccine to be working indoors in these kinds of environments. We don't know what happens once it hits the 80% threshold for the federal mandated group, where the country gets to the 80%, where there's going to be a set of rules that are lined up with that either. So we're unsure once it hits that number, that's going to be a complete change.
Okay, from Grant, looking at the easing of restrictions, it talks about children who are unvaccinated only with parents who are vaccinated. What about activities where parents are not involved? For example, martial arts schools. Can kids attend classes when they get to running indoor, outdoor classes?
That is something I will have to take on notice. I'm unsure on that. I'm not going to give an answer that's not backed up by any facts. So I'm not sure. I know they've talked about whenever the parents are in attendance, they must be vaccinated, but I'm unsure about children who are unvaccinated. I'm not sure about having to require the parent status.
The other issue there, David, is what age are we talking about? Are we talking about under 12-year-olds or 12 to 15-year-olds? Because the answer will be different depending on the age.
So I'll try to get a couple of details, and next time we come up with this, or if you need to, you can email through to the call center or to myself, and I'll try to get back to you about specifics on that, but I am unsure on that one. I really wouldn't be able to answer with any authority.
Question from Jacob regarding whether their staff have been able to get their second dose within reopening time. I'm assuming if that's New South Wales, they do have to have double dose.
I believe so. So everything is related to double dose within in New South Wales.
From Lee, will masks be mandatory for outdoor training in Melbourne?
Outdoor training, to start off with, it will be until it's the same rules that we've always had in Victoria. Victoria's had a rule where wearing a mask until the point where it becomes a danger to yourself, where you can remove that mask. So it will be the same rules that we've had the whole time when it comes to face covering. So you're allowed to remove your mask for strenuous exercise.
From Christy, can I conduct outdoor PT sessions in my driveway completely outdoors and no cover?
The problem there lies that it's still part of your property. So under a technicality, it would be part of your property. So you can't actually have anybody in to visit you. I haven't heard of any issues around using a street part of a driveway, but I'm not going to say that that won't happen. So under the technical ruling, the answer is that you can't use any part of your house for that purpose of training people.
Okay, from MD, group exercise instructors need to wear masks while teaching. It's obviously problematic trying to speak and breathe with a mask on. I think the issue there was that they could take a mask off to be able to give instructions.
So there has been some requirements in New South Wales where you're allowed to remove your mask for the purposes of teaching and those kinds of things. But if you're going to do that, you're going to have a rather large exclusion zone around them. So we need to make sure that what happens is that the person speaking towards, especially if you're speaking towards a group, that is the most dangerous time for an instructor. If they were ill, that's where a lot of the larger outbreaks have happened. So the reason that they want people to wear masks for as long as possible is that is the major deterrent. That's the area that we've seen to have the most effect on our industry. So I would say you can remove your mask if the person cannot do it any longer, as in they're teaching, people need to be able to see their face for instruction, but they are going to have a very large exclusion zone in front of them, because that is by far the most dangerous area.
Yep. From Bruce, any ideas how many clubs in Victoria will not be opening at all with the current limitations, making it not financially viable? I guess that's the $64 question, David. It's
unsure. It's going to be, if we're looking at the total number of the population that are going to be vaccinated at that stage being 80%, that's saying that adults of the adult categories of 16 plus, which would be most of your members, 80% of them would be vaccinated or have the chance to have been vaccinated. So I'd say the numbers potentially up to a 20% drop off. I'd say possibly lower, but we'll see what happens. It's going to depend on the group and the cohorts that you're training. It's a very big question, an open-ended question.
And one of the things we have been stressing to the New South Wales government is that they must maintain the existing financial support packages for businesses until we get to a situation when gyms can open to everybody.
And the same conversations have been happening here in Victoria as well. So I've been having conversations with the ministers around that as well.
And it's obviously in the government's interest to get gyms open, and it's also in their interest to get that age cohort vaccinated. So it's in their interest to keep gyms financially viable. So hopefully we can get some common sense there. From Sandro, is there or will there be any information for unvaccinated PTs and clients, more so one-on-one in a studio environment?
That's something that has not come out yet, and that is something that we're seeking advice on. It's not something that will be broadcast out at any stage at the moment, as they're really focusing on trying to get everybody vaccinated.
From Garth, New South Wales, what indoor classes are we talking about currently? Aren't they all outdoors only?
New South Wales, some of the regional areas are allowed to have indoor classes, so that they're up to 20 people in those regional areas that are unaffected by COVID and not in lockdown.
From Lee, is there an outdoor area access through the gym? If there is an outdoor area that can be accessed through the gym, can it be used?
Where is this for? That's going to be a tough one, Leah. I'd ask you, could you just reframe the question so that we get the whole of the question, so that we know where you're from and the kind of rules that we need to talk to, and then I'll try to answer it as best I can.
Okay, I have a pregnant instructor that's not going to be vaccinated. Can she still work?
The answer there would still be, unless there is I don't even believe with a medical exemption. I'm unsure if medical exemptions can be applied in this particular scenario, but most pregnant people are allowed to get vaccinated at this stage. So that'll be something between the GP, and it's going to be a very, very specific conversation. I won't answer that one to the specifics of that instructor.
No, she'd need to get I think, David, exemption from the GP.
Yeah, I'd say there'd have to be an exemption of some sort.
From Taryn, I'm from Victoria. Can we travel further than 10 k's to train clients?
No, you're not allowed to leave your location for more than 10 kilometres.
MD, what protection exists for fitness instructors whose CPR first aid have expired during the lockdown when they need to renew their insurance, given face-to-face accredited courses are not currently available? I'm pretty sure we've extended those out.
Yes, we have. So people in lockdown areas that are unable to attend the CPR and first aid, I know that we've had conversations with insurers that we work with, which is Guild, and they've definitely said that that can be extended for the whole period. I believe it's till December this year, maybe even longer. So it's not a problem there. We are allowing people to continue their registration as well as their insurance.
Yep. From Tom, the outdoor PT limit in Victoria, is that a daily limit question, or is that 2 people with a PT per hour?
That is a per hour. That is a per session.
Yep.
That is, you're allowed to have 2 people. You're allowed to train 2 people at any one time.
Yeah, so you can have multiple hours. Basically.
Yes, you may.
Yeah. From Trevor, will instructors need to wear a mask in classes when the reopen occurs?
In Victoria or New South Wales, I can probably answer. New South Wales will probably be yes to start off with. I'm unsure. Victoria, that would be a yes. They would be needing to wear them the same as anybody else participating. But if they can prove or they can show that they need to remove their mask for the purposes of being able to be clearly heard, or it's a safety risk because they're exercising, then they're allowed to remove it for that time.
This next one, I don't know if you can see it, David. It's got multiple components to it.
Okay, so what do we got? Regional Victoria roadmap, not metro. 70% fully vaccinated, says unknown vaccination status, no change from previous. What does this mean? I would have to find out from the government, but my guess is that if you're unvaccinated, that you're allowed to exercise with 2 people outdoors, personal training. There is no change to the status. So that's the way I would see it, but I can't definitively say that because I didn't write the roadmap. I can just interpret it. Can we choose to stay at second step to avoid discrimination, segregation of staffs? You can choose to stay wherever you would like. Everything about this is going to be a personal choice. So if your business is unable to operate or you choose not to operate, that's going to be up to you as well.
Yeah, let's just reiterate that there is no obligation to open at any time until you feel it's commercially viable for you to do so, until you believe that it's acceptable to your member base, your client base, whatever. There is no obligation to open at 70%, 80%, whatever. These are just availabilities for you to make business decisions on. And I guess in some situations, ethical decisions as well. From Joshua, is an exemption to vaccination if you've had COVID within 6 months?
I'm actually unsure on that. I know you're not allowed to actually get vaccinated within that time. So that would be something that I will actually take up for you, Joshua. And if you could send us through an email, I'll try to chase that up for you specifically, because I know you're not allowed to get a vaccination within 6 months of having COVID anyway. So I'll track that down for you.
I would suspect, David, they'd get a medical exemption on that.
I would think so, but I would rather chase it up first.
Yeah, definitely. I've been offered a business car park to run my PT session. Is that allowed?
depending on where it is and how it's situated. So technically, any part of a business is classified as closed underneath the orders. So that means indoors and outdoors, depending on the state and what you're going on with. A lot of people are using any outdoor space that's very, very free and accessible by the community, as that space is deemed to be a public space and being able to be used. So that's the way that has happened in the past. I can't give you a definitive on that specific. I would just contact your local police to find out if they have any issues with that. But from my understanding, most people running them outdoors in a car park has not had an issue.
Yeah, Martin's got posted a few comments there about some thoughts on how businesses might operate with a vaccine, etc. And I think that there's one of those things, obviously when members sign up, the idea of being vaccinated or not is not part of the conditions. And this is where the legal issues and the insurance issues, the indemnity issues all come into play, which is what we're trying to get further clarification from the relevant state governments on that, because it opens up a Pandora's box. Trevor, reposting a question from the chat group from someone else. Public pools opening up. Hang on, I've just lost it. Public pools opening up soon in New South Wales. Can aqua classes take place? If so, what are the participation limits? Can outdoor poolside land group fitness classes take place?
So all the limits that apply within New South Wales and aqua, the side of aqua being inside of a pool, all those would relate to the classes as well. The classes cannot exceed 20 people, as that's the maximum amount that's allowed in a group. So I would say it's going to be 20 people. And then can outdoor poolside land GF classes take place? In New South Wales, the same rules apply as everywhere else once you're land-based. So no, I would say that is a no.
Yeah, from Grant, just clarifying that it's both lots of kids, David, it's under 12s as well as under 18s.
Okay.
As I understand it, there's no vaccination available for under 12s.
There is not. No. So
so
under the under 18s would be a different kettle of fish, but the under 12s, I'd say that one's the interesting one, and I'll try to find an answer for you, Grant.
Yeah, Hannah, look, this is a really difficult question. How do we approach the vaccination discussion with staff if it's not yet formally mandated, but they currently require it to run 1-on-5 PT sessions? This is one of the things we're trying to seek clarification on, because it's very well for governments to put out these health directives, but they need to provide you as an employer or a business manager, etc., some support there. We will be having a webinar next week with a lawyer to go through these exact sort of questions. I would encourage you to just check our social medias and we'll get some definitive legal advice on that, because it's going to be a difficult one. I mean, we know what people like Qantas and some of the other companies have said, that basically if they don't want to work, they're going to have to if they're not prepared to get vaccinated, they've got to go and work somewhere else. That seems to me to be fairly harsh. So let's see what the lawyer's got to say next week. We don't want to mislead you there, but it is going to be a difficult conversation, obviously.
As it stands though for Victoria, just on that basic one of the outdoor, the person would be able to run 2-on-1 personal training, but not the 1-on-5.
Correct. From Caleb, do we get further FA registration extensions? Most this year we cannot work in Victoria. Well, you're currently having it, Caleb, extended at the moment. We will look at extending that further depending on how long it takes, and we probably will for Victoria, depending on how long it takes for you to get to the 70 or the 80%. Michelle, do you have to get clients to check on using QR codes if we have all the info from them booking in? This is for outdoor training. So basically, if they come, David, in their wallet, like I've got my vaccination, is that okay?
Do you have to get your QR check-ins when it's coming up for an outdoor boot camp? Yes, you do have to do QR check-ins. Either way, any commercial business is required in New South Wales, Victoria, ACT to have a QR check-in code. So yes, you have to check that everybody's QR coding in, because the booking information won't be enough. So the government has legislated that you will require a QR check-in.
Louise, the answer to that is yes. We are still supporting businesses making their own choices. From Hannah, in Victoria, given we can only run PT outdoors, what's the go with permits? They sometimes take months to be approved by council. Is there some leniency around this if running small group sessions outdoors in line with all other government rules?
This is something I've been chasing up for the last couple of weeks with a lot of the local government areas, and trying to find a way that they can open up the parks and areas for us to be able to use those. Some have been quite successful with that, others are not. I'd contact your local. If you've got a specific government area that you'd like me to talk to, Hannah, I'm happy to go into bat for you. Just contact me via email and we'll go through the specifics there.
Thanks, David. From Hayden in New South Wales, once 70% fully vaccination reached, will marks be required for individual training inside gyms?
I'm unsure in New South Wales. They haven't actually come up with the actual rules around what will be required, whether masks is going to be an ongoing concern. Outdoors, they're slowly but surely, I know they're going to slowly get rid of masks outdoors. But when it comes to indoors, it's going to be an interesting one.
From Lyndon, does Fitness Australia have a position statement on vaccinations? We did have that on our website, I think, a couple of weeks back. Basically, we support vaccinations provided that the participant or the individual getting a vaccination has appropriate conversations with their medical authorities to make sure it's appropriate and safe for them. We do not support, as an industry association, mandated vaccinations unless the government so determines that that has to happen. Alina, do you know any more about gym staff being vaccinated? Will FA support staff with strategies and procedures to check members are vaccinated? I think that's coming, and we've
that is definitely
talked about it already.
Yeah, that's something that's on the way. We're trying to come up with some different things to support your staff around how they can have those difficult conversations and how you can have difficult conversations as well. So that's something that's definitely on the forward step.
From Grant, just confirming allowance of trainers in a gym for filming of videos and online classes. Are we allowed to film in the gym? And is there a limit on the number of instructors looking at approximately 2 people?
Grant, are you based in Victoria or New South Wales? Would be my quick question. If you could just top that somewhere so that we can find that out. So in Victoria, you're allowed up to 5 people for filming, for the purposes of filming. New South Wales, it's the minimum amount required to do that. It would not be more than 2 to 5 people. You would say that it'd have to be less than 5. So yeah, less than 5 people, you should be fine. I'd say just to cover yourself as well, to make sure that people don't start calling into the police and getting all the complaints coming through, that you put a note up on the door that says that you're using the facility for the purposes of filming and that you have less than X amount of people in here doing this in line with the requirements from New South Wales Health.
Okay, from Caleb, I've seen one company in Melbourne, Southeast, running PT in various parks one-on-one. Is this okay currently with or without distance restrictions?
You're allowed to run one-on-one, you're allowed to run one-on-two currently. So that started as of Saturday. Anything before Saturday, technically you were not allowed to have any personal training happening in Melbourne, the greater Melbourne area.
Hannah, that's another question that I would really encourage you to tune in next week for the lawyers, because no one on this call is an industrial lawyer, and I would not want to be giving you advice on that situation that causes you problems. So I'd suggest you dial in next week and ask those questions if they're not covered in the presentation. From Simone, Melbourne 80% full vax for indoor group fitnesses. Will there be different capacity limits for vaccinated versus unvaccinated, or must all attendees be fully vaccinated to attend any group fitness session?
I believe it'll be everybody that attends the actual facility will be required to be vaccinated at 80% in Victoria.
Okay.
Yep.
Sorry?
That's right.
How do they prove they have, from Joshua, and how do they prove that they have contracted COVID? Oh, this must be the one about not being able to get vaccinated within 6 months.
I'm unsure. That'd be something that you would have had through New South Wales Health would have your details, or Vic Health, or your relative health organisation, as well as your doctor. So
Lee's put in Melbourne. I'm not sure what question that relates to.
Neither am I.
From Dane, in New South Wales, once you hit 70%, any ideas whether we'll be required to close in the event of a positive case in the club? So that'd be the lockdown sort of situation on a site-by-site basis.
Potentially, you might have to close for a very short period of time for cleaning. They haven't actually come out with the rules around that. They're because of the fact that everybody that'll be inside will be vaccinated. I believe that they believe there's a lower risk. So I don't think it's going to have quite the same level of requirement as there was. But I'm sure that there will be some kind of closed or some kind of cleaning protocols that will be required in the time between.
And do we know of any specific types or brands of masks that are more sort of breathable than others this is for a group exercise, be able to speak, etc.?
I'm unsure of that, so I wouldn't be able to speak to that, sorry.
And MD's also asked, picking up on our comment that Guild will cover the insurance through with a Gallagher's will. I think as we have a few that are insured with Gallagher, it might be worth us taking that.
We'll chase that up for you.
That's
not a problem.
Perhaps I'm going to come back to you on that. Okay, Lee, the gym is in Melbourne. You'd enter via the driveway.
Okay, in the driveway, 2-on-1, outdoors. It's, as I said, technically, anytime that you're on your property, you're not allowed to have a visitor on your property. There is some rulings around your driveway being that of accessible by the street and by the public. I'm not going to say that I'm a lawyer on this, but if you're out on your driveway far away from the house, I don't think you're going to get a lot of issues, but I would just check with your local police. That's probably the quickest and easiest way to do that one.
Yeah, okay. So from Lisa, do we predict that Vax passports will be coming to other states too? It's very hard to predict anything, but I think it would be reasonably safe to say if it works in New South Wales and Victoria, it will probably flow through to those other states.
And at a minimum, they're going to be using them for any form of traveling, probably in between states or traveling internationally. It's going to be a part of life coming forward, I'd say, anyway. So that, yeah, it will probably be part of your life at some point. It's just where and when, we don't know.
Yeah. From Nancy, when we open in New South Wales, is it 20 in a class as long as you stick to the 4 square metres? I think that's the case, isn't it, David?
Yeah, 20 in a class, up to 20 in a class, 4 square metres, and all must be vaccinated.
And you can have multiple classes in bigger spaces.
Yes, as long as you can clearly define those as separate classes. So there has to be a very definitive space between them so that it's not sitting on top of each other, and you can't have the same instructor walking between, would be what I would guess, as they would say that that's just one big class.
Yeah. Are we required to view a client's vaccination certificate prior to them training outdoors?
You can take them at the word if you wish. That's going to be up to you. At the moment, they're saying that the person must carry their vaccination certificate, so that they would be in trouble and in breach in any state. I would say that if you want to look after yourself, I would ask to see it, and they don't have to show you because, of course, that's their personal history, but it's also your risk that you're applying to yourself and your business and everyone in your class as well.
It might also be just, I guess, wise to get them to email you saying they have one or whatever. You know, if they can't show it to you, won't show it to you, at least get something in writing that they've indicated you've asked and they've said yes. From Emily, at 80% first dose, can an unvaccinated trainer and 2 unvaccinated clients continue to train outside?
I believe that will be the case. I believe that's the carry-on that they were speaking with, that you'll be able to continue to do outdoor training 2-on-1. But I cannot guarantee that. I'll find out for you if there's anything more specific than that. But from my understanding, that's where it'll sit.
Airlines will be requiring passengers to be vaccinated. Where does the fitness industry stand on this? I think that's something we're still trying to come to a definitive position on, because there is a very wide spectrum of views on what the fitness industry should, where we should stand on that. I am aware that some of the larger groups are working with their lawyers to develop up a position on that, which may give us some clarity as well. Martin, hey guys, you left out the billing question. That will be almost the first question our franchisees will want to know, is its thoughts on billing. Will members opt in or opt out?
That's something that's come up quite a lot. So basically it's asking whether you'll, I would suggest that you need to send out an email to your members to say that you'll be turning their billing back on at X date. So that would probably be a part of your conversation. And then they will be required before entry to the facility to show that their vaccine status. So
does the PT business owner need to be vaccinated for one-on-one indoors in New South Wales?
Are we talking in regional Victoria? Because regional Victoria at the moment doesn't have
New South Wales.
Regional New South Wales doesn't have a requirement for vaccination at the moment for training. If you're talking about indoors when they reach the 70%, yeah, there has been a requirement that anybody that enters indoors to do any form of training will be required to have vaccination.
Yeah, okay, another question here, which really comes down to the employers or the business's own, I guess, ability to stand staff down or whatever, even worse. So again, we aren't lawyers. I would suggest very much that you tune in next week so that you can get a definitive answer on that. We don't want to give you misleading information there. From Chris, good day, Chris. 5 people in Victoria for broadcast and workouts, they need to be double vaxxed. There
is no requirement currently around vaccination, anything before the 70% mark anyway. So at the moment, they would suggest that you should try to find out, you should be vaccinated, you should definitely not be ill, and you should have all the other precautions that you can take, but there is no requirement for double vaccination when it comes to filming at the moment in Victoria.
Thanks, David. Last one at the moment. In New South Wales, post-2020, we were permitted to run classes of 2 by 20 people within the one studio with one instructor, but still adhering to the 1 per 4 square metre rule.
Mm-hmm.
There was no crossover between participants or instructor between one side of the room and the other. Will this still be permitted?
I'm unsure. It is probable that it will. I would just make sure that you can really definitively show that those are 2 separate groups. The hard part being that if somebody walks in and they are seen to be one big group, there can still be some concerns that can be put forward from the health side of things.
From John, New South Wales, can we travel more than the 5Ks to train clients outdoors one-on-one?
The answer is you must stay within your LGA or no more than 5 kilometres at this stage from Sydney. The Sydney metro area, the people under the lockdown restrictions.
Okay, Hannah, we'll do our best to see if we can get that legal person on sooner rather than later, but given that they're having to prepare their answers and do some research, it may not happen, but we'll certainly do our best. I'll tell them we can have a cherry on top as well and see if that helps with the process. We really do understand and appreciate we're in uncharted territories here for everybody, and it's very problematic trying to make decisions, business decisions, HR decisions, ethical decisions, all those decisions when there's still so much up in the air. But we'll try and get as many answers as quickly as we can. We don't want to mislead you, but there's been a huge amount of questions today, a lot of participants, and David, you can go and have a rest now, put your head down for a while.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. Thanks for tuning in, and please keep tuning in with us, and we'll try and get the answers to answer all those questions and more, I'm sure, as we move forward. Thanks, guys. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you.